Nestling in the Warwickshire countryside on the edge of the Cotswolds, Whichford Pottery has become world-renowned for its top-quality, handmade terracotta flower pots. Founded in 1976 by Jim Keeling, the pottery is a working community, following traditional methods to create its distinctive designs. Over the years, the pottery has become well known for its imaginative and varied plantings, using their terracotta as inspiration. This has resulted in the winning of top awards at the Chelsea Flower Show.
There you go, John.
Thanks.
There's the finished pots going off to the customers, but they all start over here. Here's the clay as we buy it in. It's just as dug, like you find in the bottom of your garden. We get it in by the lorry load, and it's very important to us that we have control over how we blend it and process it. It's quite a complicated process. I'll take you to Richard and he'll show you how it's done. So we start off with 3 clays, which we blend. Richard.
Okay. So this machine is the blender. So we're adding the 3 raw clays in a certain ratio. And what a blender does is it mixes the 3 raw clays with a vast amount of water, turning the clay into what we call a slip, which is just like a liquid clay. So there's 2 reasons why we're mixing the clays with a lot of water. One reason is to blend the 3 clays together. The other reason is to enable us to sieve the clay. And that's what we're doing here. We're pumping the slip through a series of sieves, and the sieves are taking out all the sand, the grit and all the impurities. So we're just ending up with a clean slip which passes through the sieves and into our storage tank. And it gets pumped into the filter press. When we have enough pressure, we have the water being forced through the filter cloths, and the water just drains out onto the floor. But all the clay particles will be retained inside that chamber. The pressing process takes about 7, maybe 8 hours. But at this stage, the clay is very uneven. Typically, you've got very hard outers to the sheet, but the middle of the sheet is very soft and sticky and gungy. So the clay needs mixing with itself. So we do that in a machine here called the pug mill. So we're simply rolling the clay up and chucking it into the pug mill. So this pug mill simply packages the clay into nice, square, manageable blocks. When it comes out, it gets chopped into chunks and stacked onto a pallet. We then forget about the clay. The longer we can keep it, the better the quality becomes. So we're aging the clay for at least 2 weeks. So once this pallet is full, we'll cover it with a lot of plastic to stop it from drying out. We will then give it a number and then put it into storage. And then in 2 weeks' time, it will be pulled out and it will be then pugged again, ready for the throwers. So at Whichford, our emphasis is on quality of the pots and also the frostproofness of the pots. It would be a lot cheaper to buy the clay in from a supplier, but we wouldn't be in control of the clay.
So I've got a trolley of clay here from the clay room, fresh up, and I'm going to weigh out some balls, show you how it's done. Most of what we make here is made by throwing on the wheel. I'm going to throw you some 14-pound balls. And once they're weighed out, we're ready to go. We always throw on bats, which are just bits of chipboard, false wheel heads, so that we can take the pot off without damaging it. The first thing to do is centre. I learnt my craft with people who'd been settled potters for 4 generations, so that's this is a very economic technique. You don't do any work you don't have to. And there's an absolutely set number of moves. Now I've opened out the bottom already, made the hole. There's the first pull. Very little water, just enough to stop the hands pulling too much, but of course it's a lubricant, so if you put too much on, you got to work harder. Beginning to form the rim. This is quite a tall, thin pot, so they're harder work than the flatter ones, because you've got to fight gravity. And centrifugal force is always trying to pull it out, the shape of the pot. So this is the last pull to get the full height. And I'll check the measurement when I've got up to the top. You can see it's wobbling a bit, you're forcing the clay. I'll take that out in a moment, those wobbles, but as long as the rim's firm, just check the height. Alright, well, I'm plenty of height there. Check the width, I've got the calipers set. Right width, plenty of height, so that's good. Now for base details, we sometimes use templates. This is a bit of aluminium carved out. I just offer it up to the base. And particularly if you've got a team of throwers, it does give some uniformity. We always use ribbers, or ribs as they're called, on the outside of the pot. Originally they would be made from ox ribs, now they're just bits of metal. It gives you a smoothness to the pot, and pretty well all traditional potters everywhere use them. For flower pots it's more practical to have a clean surface. It doesn't hold the bugs. So we're getting nearly finished now. Now I'm going to put a roulette on. This is an easy way of decorating. The simplest is just little marks, but I'm going to use a more complicated one, which is this, which is a bit of carved clay with a repeat pattern on it. And you rotate the pot slowly, offer it up, and press. And the same down at the bottom. A bit thicker there so it can go faster. I'll take the pottery stamp, which has got our name and address, and very importantly the year date. I'll put that on the pot. There you go. Wire the pot off. Lift it off on its back. There you go. So that's the basics of throwing a pot. That pot's finished now. It's been decorated with a roulette and had its stamp and everything. There are other ways of decorating a pot on the wheel as it's made, and one of the best to watch is making pastry. The principle's the same 3 moves. This is one with a split rim, as we call it. So I'm gathering a piece of clay out of just underneath the rim there, so that I can do some pastry work on it. So always you've got 3 pulls, as they're called, 3 opening moves. Like many of my shapes, this is a sort of traditional shape which we've adapted. A simple roulette either side of the band. And some pastry. And finally, the all-important stamp. So that's 2 designs, but we've got a lot more than that in our catalogue. I think we've got over 250 lines. Some small, some large. Most of our production is made on the wheel, and we take great pride in the skills we've got here. Several of us have been throwing over 20 years. I think I've done 27 years myself. They always used to say it took 15 years to make a potter. and it's about that long. It's a very difficult process. Very simple, but very difficult. And it's the job which needs the most training. We've got usually between 4 and 5 apprentices at any one time, and that is a very important part of the philosophy of the business. Here's Tim throwing a hosta pot, which is made from about 12 pounds of clay. They are part of the range which will be decorated the day after they've been made. They'll stiffen slightly and then we can apply decoration. The largest pot we'd throw in one piece would be half a hundredweight, 56 pounds. Here's Andy throwing a large basket. As you can see, it's quite a lot of effort involved. Andy's got, I think, 22 years throwing experience here, and you've really got to know what you're doing before you take on 56 pounds of clay. If you try throwing more than about half a hundredweight of clay at a time, it doesn't really work because you can't pull it up further than your arm reaches. So for very large pots, you'll split up the total weight into 2, 3, 4, however many sections you need to, and throw them separately, let them stiffen slightly, put them back on the wheel and loop them together as an entirely separate process. So let's see Tony doing that now.
Instead of leaving a base in the pot now, my hands have gone right down to the wooden board. So I'm making a hollow cylinder. And we have to remember that it's been made essentially upside down. And obviously, as this area here is going to be the join, we need to make sure it's exactly the same size, the same diameter as the base section. And there we are. Absolutely spot on there. So here I'm just about to join 2 sections together. It's a 2-piece pot.
The pots need to be left to stiffen slightly before they join together, otherwise they'll collapse. It does depend on the weather, but Tony's looked at them and they seem to be about right the next day.
This is the bottom section that I'm just recentering on the wheel. Roughen up the edge so you've got maximum surface area. Apply the soft clay squibber, which acts as glue. Make sure there's plenty on there. This helps to weld the 2 sections together. And now to add the top section.
Throwing is a very ancient technique. It's been in use at least 5,000 years. And apart from the fact we use electric motors rather than kicking or pedalling the wheel around in some way, we're using exactly the same techniques as those first Mesopotamian potters used 5 millennia ago. This way of working is artisan rather than what some people might think of as craftsmen. Very much a community working where you need other people to help you in the process and you all work together, and a reasonable amount of specialisation.
And the final curve to the rim. And then we add the decorative band. Again, scoring the pot first to make sure it sticks on well. This time we add a little bit of water, and then we extrude the band through a die plate. And add the final Whichford roulette.
So that pot was made out of 2 balls of clay weighing 40 pounds of clay each. This next pot, an Alibaba, is made out of 3 sections, 2 of which weigh 60 pounds of clay each. So there's 160 pounds of clay just in this one pot. There's a limited amount of decoration you can add to a pot while it's still being thrown on the wheel. If we want to decorate a pot, we'll put it aside on the racks for usually about a day, let it stiffen up enough, and we'll decorate it with relief decoration of some sort.
If it's a shallow mould, you can hold it onto the wall of the pot and push the wall of the pot into the mould.
It's a demanding job. It needs a steady hand and quite a lot of nerve actually too, because these pots are quite soft still. When you start off training people, you get some very strange shapes and weird things happening. So over the years we've built up an enormous selection of moulds of flowers and satyrs' heads and swags and you name it. This one's a hoster. So that's a pot made using a form of sprig moulding, adding a little bit of relief on the outside. We also extrude strips and add them as basket work, and these are a perennial favourite. I think the design, as far as I know, comes from Elizabethan times, with Pomona's basket full of fruit. You see it on early woodcuts. We've got a version of it where we interweave these extruded strips. You've got to be very meticulous. Here's another variant of the basket flower pot where we flatten the back of an ordinary round thrown pot, stuck a hole in it so you can hang it on the wall, and for decorative purposes we're putting a rather nice twisted handle on the back. Again, it's a variation of a very old design. There are some shapes you just can't throw, so we do have another way of making, and that is hand pressing. This is one of our newer ranges using very clean, quite modern designs. They work very well as planters. You'll see later on I'm going to plant one up. This next one is an Italianate pot based on an old Tuscan design. We take a plaster mould, which of course we originate ourselves to our own designs, and you beat, rather laboriously, clay into the mould, let it stiffen for a day, remove the mould, and then bring the surface to life with a lot of fettling and work. It gives us the chance to make not only ovals or eclipse-shaped or square, it also enables us to put much more decoration on than will be practical on a thrown pot. Always interested in investigating commissions and special projects. Even if you want your family crest put on, we can do that, and frequently do.
This pot is a ham house urn, and it's a 5-piece mould. I made it yesterday, so the pot will actually shrink away from the mould, and I just release the top sections away.
It's one of the commissions that we get from time to time to make specials. This one for the National Trust in the 1980s, based on historical reconstruction, which is something we rather enjoy doing. These have come out of the mould. As you can see, there's an awful lot of work to do on them still. Once the pots have been made and decorated, that's only just the beginning. They've then got to be got through the process without cracking, because these pots are shrinking about 10% as they dry in the kiln, so we have to be very careful with them, dry them in fairly controlled conditions. They have to be bone dry before they go in the kiln, otherwise we just blow them up. So when they're absolutely bone dry, we pass them down and put them in the kiln for firing, and the firing takes about 24 hours to reach 1,000 plus centigrade, which gives us the optimum colour and the optimum porosity, because we want them to be porous enough, somewhere about 6-10%, but not so porous that they fall apart in the frost, of course, and not so impervious that the root balls don't breathe. So it's quite a finely judged thing. So I hope that gives you some feel for what we do at Whichford Pottery. As you see, we have a lot of fun both making the pots and planting them up. Don't be afraid of trying out new ideas with pots. Be bold. It's not like a herbaceous border where you've got to wait for years. A flower pot you can plant for just one season, try things out which are quite outrageous, move them around, have fun. You're always very welcome to visit the pottery. You can see how the pots are made for yourselves, and you can look at our show gardens. There's always lots of stuff going on here, different seasonal plantings, so look forward to seeing it.